This is part 5 of our water gun video series where we learn to make a water gun using a dial caliper. In this video we will learn how to make the tiny pieces on the inside that work as seals to allow the water gun to function. To understand how these parts work on the inside, we have to actually look at it a little bit. But basically these two little mushroom pieces are the most important pieces of the whole thing. They make the whole system work. And sometimes they're bean shaped depending on the brand of the water gun. But the thing you need to know is they go pointed downwards inside. And so they both go pointing down. The question you have to ask yourself is, well, how do you know which way is down? Because it does matter. It's not completely symmetrical on the inside. On one side, you've got a little cylinder extrusion. On the other side, you've got just a narrow hole. And so how do you know which way is up and which way is down? Well, that's what this little tiny extrusion tells us. And in fact, let's go ahead and make that. So to do that, I'm going to make a tangent plane on this face here and hit OK. And let's start a sketch on that plane and draw ourselves a circle. And we can go ahead and let's turn off these other pieces that we don't need right now. We can tell it to go ahead and line up with our origin using a horizontal constraint. And I'm going to hit P on my keyboard to project this edge here, and it doesn't line up the entire edge. It just sort of centers it because it's a loft. So we just need to put a point down to fix that, and go ahead and put a point down on the circle as well while we're at it. And let's line up these points with the origin as well. All right, let's get our measurements. And first thing first, let's figure out how wide this little extrusion piece is. And it looks like it's about 0.035 inches wide. So we'll grab our dimension tool and tell it to be 0.035. And then how far back does it go? And what, 0.185 back? So we'll grab our dimension tool and go from this point to be 0.185 back. We'll finish our sketch. And I'm going to first extrude this down. Let's see if it'll work. To object. And to object has been acting up. That's okay. I'm going to make it a distance. And I'm just going to drag it down, but make sure I select join. And as long as I don't drag it through the entire body so that I see it through the bottom, it doesn't really matter. And hit OK. Because remember, we selected a tangent plane. So on the left and right side, it's raised just a little bit higher than the face itself. But then I am going to extrude it up. And the question is how high up does it go? So if we look at that, we can just line up our dial caliper here with this edge, if I can see it, and just push until it hits the edge there. And what do we got? 0.035 tall, okay? 0.035. And so now that we have that piece, we know which way is the top on this piece. And as I was saying earlier, the mushroom seal pieces go pointed downward. And the one that goes in on the top sort of seals this hole. And so the hole has to be thinner than the mushroom shape. But on the bottom, it's a little bit different. It's kind of hard to see from here, but basically, if I can get it in there, you can kind of see it now. There's a little extrusion going from one end to the other so that this mushroom piece cannot fall through all the way, so that it doesn't fall inside. It's kind of hard to see. Maybe we can see it from this angle. You can kind of see it right there. And I'll go ahead and just draw it on here so that you can see what I'm talking about if you can't. I'll start a sketch on this face, and I'll just grab my circle tool, and I'll just connect it to the top. And let me just project this edge here. And then I can tangent it to that as well. And then it's still not fully constrained because I can move it side to side. So let me grab my horizontal vertical constraint and line it up with my origin. And there we go. I'll finish my sketch and just extrude it through. And I'll just make sure it's not coming out the back and change it to a join. And hit OK. And so that's kind of what's going on at the bottom so that these little seal pieces can't fall through. But at the top, it's a little bit different. And to explain it, I actually think the best way to explain it would be just to make it. And so let's look at how it looks when it's in there. If we look at it from the top and we drop the seal piece inside, pointing down like it's supposed to, you can see how it's almost level with the top of this. Let's just assume that it is level, just to keep everything simple. And let's start a sketch on this mid-right plane here. And let's hit slice so we can see the inside. And the first thing I want to do is project this top edge here. Okay. Just so I have this edge to work with, and I'm going to grab a rectangle tool and I'm going to line it up on that edge. And let's actually delete this edge, and we can drag this down now. And I'm going to grab my line tool and I'm going to drag this out. And I'll grab my arc tool and connect these two. And hopefully by now you see what I'm doing. I'm making a revolution profile of this shape. Okay, right click cancel. I'm going to go ahead and make this line here a center line. And let's go ahead and decide on the size of this whole thing. How wide is it at its widest point? If we look, it's 0.115 more or less. And so if I go to dimension and I select this outermost point to the center line, that'll give me a diameter instead of a radius. And we said that's 0.115. And it's possible that when it did that, it made this edge wider than the other. You just drag this edge in now if that happened. But how wide is the thinnest part? The diameter is about 0.08. Okay. So we grab our dimension tool and select from this point to the center line and type in 0.08. And then how tall is the entire thing? If we go from edge to edge, how tall is it? It looks like it's about 0.315 tall. So if I grab my dimension tool and I go from end to end, we can type in 0.315. Now, I do want it to be centered, so to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my point tool, and I'm going to find the center of this edge here at the top, and I'm going to tell that to be coincident with this corner here, so that this is now centered. And now, why is this? Well, I can change these sizes. That's what's going on here. But why can I change it? Well, basically, I don't want it to be like this. I don't want it to sort of pop up. That's going to make it look funny. I'm going to make it perfectly spherical. So to do that, I'm going to grab my line tool and turn on construction lines. And I'm going to draw a horizontal line here. Right click OK, and I'm going to grab my line tool again, and I'm going to draw a vertical line here off of this corner. And I'm going to use both of those. I'm going to tell this arc to be tangent with this horizontal line, and I'm going to tell this arc to be tangent with this vertical line, making this a sort of perfect sphere. And so now that I've got it fully constrained, I can finish my sketch and I can go ahead and revolve this. And I want to make sure it is a new component. There it is on the inside there. Hit OK. And we'll change the name to seal. So let's go ahead and turn on our sectional analysis and look at this at the inside now. So basically, it's obvious that this would just fall through. If I click and drag it through, it would just fall through this hole. I'm going to hit revert position. So what keeps it from falling through? Well, I still want water to be able to come through. So I want a hole here. I just want it to be less wide than the end of this mushroom. And so to make that happen, I'm going to enter into my reservoir. I'm going to activate this component only. But I still want to be able to see my seal. And I want to start a sketch on this right plane here. And the first thing I want to do is I want to hit P on my keyboard and project this back face and hit OK. And I want to make sure I connect both of these points with a line. And I want to draw a center line as well. So I'm going to go ahead and find this center of this line up here and drag down. Now it's not letting me select this line for some reason, so I'm just going to make sure it's vertical, and I'm going to left click and then right click OK. Let's see if we can't fix that. I should just be able to make it coincident with this point. Yes, I can. Okay, so this arc is not really showing up as an option. That's actually why we drew this line earlier. We couldn't see the line, but we could see the points in the middle. Whenever you project geometry, sometimes it gets a little weird, so it'll project the points but not the edges in between. We can actually do something similar right here as well. I'm going to grab my 3-point arc tool, and I'm going to select these 2 points, and then I'll select this center point. And so now I should have an arc to work with. And yes, it does finish off this shape. But if you think about it, this isn't really what I want to revolve. So what's the next thing I want to do? Well, let's grab my 3-point arc tool, and I'm going to select this edge, and I'm going to select this center line, and I'm going to drag down an arc. Now, I want this to be tangent with this edge right here, so I'm going to grab my tangent tool, select my arc, and select this edge, right-click OK, and then I can actually drag this arc now up and down at both parts until I get it exactly where I want it, which should be pretty dang close to this center point here. Now, this doesn't really have to be perfect. I just need a hole that's less wide than this mushroom-shaped seal here. So let me grab my line tool, and it doesn't really matter where I put it on this arc. I'm just going to drag it down so that it's vertical and it hits this other arc. I'm going to right-click and hit OK. And so now you can see we have this profile that will create a hole if we revolve it. And so let me show you what I mean. If I finish my sketch and I revolve this shape around this center axis, and I make sure it has joins selected, well, then you can see what happens. You can see how now I have this hole. If I turn off my sectional analysis, you actually can't see it anymore. But you can see, let me turn it back on. You can see how now this shape can't fall through this piece. It's stuck in place, and it is allowed to cover up this hole to seal it, which is kind of the point. And hopefully by the end of this, it'll make a lot more sense what we're doing. But there are 2 seals. There's one at the bottom and one at the top. So what's going on at the bottom? Well, actually, all we have to do is I'm going to leave my water gun and activate my full assembly. And I'm just going to hit Move Copy. And I'm going to make sure I have components selected. And I'm going to select my seal. I'm going to select Create Copy. And I'm just going to drag down a copy seal that is lower than this piece right here, and hit OK. And so now I should have 2 seals, one in each end of my reservoir. And they're both pointed down, and they're both blocked from falling inside the reservoir into the center in different ways. Now, this video is really getting kind of long. I had originally planned to show you how to build the next couple of parts in this video as well, but I think this is a good stopping point. Hopefully in the next video, I will make it clear why the reservoir really has to be shaped this way on the inside, and why these seal pieces are necessary in general.